Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to see everybody. I'm Megan Finnerty, and I am helping out tonight as your host of Brand Storytelling's first ever virtual happy hour storytelling event. So you guys know if you go to Elevate, Brand Storytelling hosts a storytelling competition on the opening night. But in the spirit of these days, this is not a competition. Instead, this is a time for us to get together, hang out, and listen to some of your peers and colleagues tell true first-person stories, sheerly for your benefit, purely to entertain you and give you that feeling of community while we are all hashtag stay home. Normally, my day job is I run a national storytelling collective on behalf of USA Today called the Storytellers Project. And so you've seen us and hung out with us because we also sell custom storytelling nights to brands, nonprofits, and big groups of people. But really, I'm just here volunteering because I thought it'd be super fun. And so all of our storytellers are also volunteering tonight. Before we get into the stories, though, I would love for you to see all of them. We are super excited to introduce our storytellers this evening. We're going to bring you up Clint Schaff. He's the vice president and head of LA Times Studios. Clint brought you Dirty John literally across every platform available in America. So, hi, Clint. Thanks for being here. Joey Elkins and Blake Silver are a writing duo that we are excited to have courtesy of our friend Ty Braswell. He recommended them and we are excited for their story. Spoiler alert, they've been friends since they were small children. We're excited to have Melody Lynn. She's the Associate Director of Insights with Carrot USA. Hi, Melody. And Ivy Eisenberg, she's of IdeaWorks, and she's partners with our very own Danielle Dardashti. The two run Story Boom, a storytelling show in White Plains, New York. So we're excited to have Ivy. She does this, you guys. She's not to say she's a ringer. This is sort of like a full show of ringers, but I don't want to overpromise. All right, let's get into it. So here's what we're not doing. You guys know storytelling, even though at Brand Storytelling, we talk about it as selling. But tonight, storytelling is just about visiting. It's not going to be a TED Talk. It's not Toastmasters. It's not a how-to. It's not an inspirational speech. We're not even going to try to sell you a subscription, which is what I try to sell you at my storytelling shows. Instead, we're really here to visit. Like, we want our hearts to connect with your hearts. So we hope that you lean in and you feel close to these people and that you've got a drink of your own to like toast with. Some of these stories are going to be casual and conversational. Some are going to be polished and professional. Some are going to be super breezy and funny, and others like might get a little awkward or like delve into some really like heartfelt and vulnerable moments. We ask that you receive all of these stories because that's how community connecting really happens, is when you like receive them with your whole heart. Tonight's theme is really just here to entertain you. We don't have a big elaborate theme. We ask people for lighthearted, funny stories in which nothing super terrible happens because like there's enough of that right now. With that, we want to offer you one last thought. We know that creating empathy and understanding is vital in times of uncertainty. And we're here together with you because we know that storytelling is one of the best possible ways to do that. Tonight, we hope to lift up the values of hope, perseverance, compassion, generosity, if not through the exact story topics, through this event itself. With that, it's a blessing and a joy to welcome up our very first storyteller. Clint is here to talk with you. Take it away, Clint.
Hey, Megan, thanks a lot. Great, here we go. So I grew up in North Dakota. I was the youngest of 4 siblings. I was youngest by 10 years in a rural area. It's alone a lot. And so I found really connection to people unlike myself and other people through hip hop music. I grew up on the Fat Boys and the Beastie Boys and Run DMC. I had a group called the Wolverines. We did raps about Teen Wolf. And our best line was about having our own Ferrari with the built-in Atari. Hip hop kind of gave me a culture to be a part of and helped me learn about people different than myself. I think that's how I got into media work and using media and entertainment as a means by which people can come together. And that's how we, all of us brand storytellers maybe have some similar story. But for me, I did that, those rap as a very young kid. Fast forward nearly 30 years, and I had become friendly and partnered with one of my favorite hip hop groups. And this hip hop group, we did some business projects together. At the time, I was US General Manager for a global agency group, and I was building a hip hop karaoke website for this well-established indie hip hop group. But outside of the agency group, I had a consumer electronics startup also, and I was partnered with them on that. We were doing a crowdfunding campaign for this phone case with speakers. Really, it was a dream come true. I'm working with these hip hoppers, doing a side business, making cool hip hop karaoke website. Life was great. We had no budget with this campaign. We had to call in favors. It was scrappy, capital SCRAPPY. We managed to get a pretty well-known comedian and comic character actor to participate in the project. that first meeting, this comic and I, my director, we had a blast. We went out karaokeing after the meeting in the Sunset Strip with a member of Tenacious D and a member of Kid and Play. It was glorious. Again, dreams come true. Along the way, he told us about his first lead role in a film and how while doing the film, he was told that he had to buy gifts for the cast and crew. So as a comic actor, he bought them sex toys. Yep. So being this pretty well-known actor's new friend, and since he was doing this project for me and these rappers for free, big thank you, I went home and bought him a sex toy as well. And without getting into the details, I'll say it was a machine that provides men with a certain kind of release. It was a joke. It was something I had seen someone share on Facebook as a joke, and it was something I could buy on a crowdfunding site. So I'm supporting an entrepreneur, and I'm getting a deal. So we're off to a great start. Then a year goes by. This actor is not being paid, cancels on me a couple times. I cancel on him once. He gets another movie role, big one. He goes on a national headline comedy tour. Oof. We got to get this thing done. You know, for all you agency folks out there, you know, we got to close out these projects. The finance folks are not happy with me that this project is lingering. I got to close down. And my hip hop client also needs to get this site launched. The upcoming album is about to drop. We got to do this with or without this lead video. So my director and I hit the road to meet this comedian in Philadelphia, where he has one night on his entire multi-month tour. He has one day off. So we're going to take that day from him. We get a free location at a suburban Philadelphia restaurant. And so we booked that. So we end up going there to find out that it wasn't actually closed. My friend was trying to do me a solid, but there were dozens of senior citizens eating roast beef sandwiches while this comedian was supposed to do his act. So that did not go very well. We relocated to the actor's downtown Philly hotel, and that hotel was extremely accommodating given the circumstances. So the video turned out great. We launched the website, the hip hop karaoke website, huge hit. And a side note, we basically created TikTok years before TikTok. So TikTok, if you're listening, you're going to get a letter from my lawyers. Fast forward another year, beyond a year. I'm at South by Southwest with a bunch of friends and these executives from the hip hop label. I had shielded them from most of the trials and tribulations of the creation of the site and the video because they don't need to see how all the sausage gets made. But it was a big ordeal, right? So with the project well into our rearview mirror, I decided over a few beers to tell them this crazy story about this comedian, the sex toy, all the Philly trip, all of that. And there were a lot of other twists and turns. The story suddenly gets really quiet. Like pin drop, awkward, quiet. After gulping, knowing so there's something I don't know, I learned then that my partners in this hip hop label, because the site on which I had purchased this sex toy for this well-known comedian is the same crowdfunding site that we had launched our product together, that they saw that entire purchase history many years prior. And it had been a frequent topic of speculation, to say the least. And so basically, these longtime friends of mine that I admire and grew up admiring pretty much thought I was a weird guy who buys sex toys for personal enjoyment off of crowdfunding sites. I was mortified. They all laughed. A year later, I presented to them the purchased sex toy in the original packaging, unused, of course, at my own groom's dinner at a pre-wedding party. So that's pretty much the end of this. It's lots of laughs, hopefully, in this winding story of B-list celebrities, a sex toy, an unopened sex toy, and hip-hop karaoke. Branded content has never been more interesting. So that's that. Without further ado, that's my story.
And Clint, I do want to ask you, when you brought this out at your own bachelor party, did you have to tape the box back together so it looked unopened? I'm kidding. I'm sorry.
Yeah, exactly. I had to buy my own rap machine. No, the epilogue of the story is another friend at the wedding, who hopefully is listening to this, then proceeded to steal said gift and it's never been seen again. So who knows?
I bet that's coming. No, that's coming out at a Christmas near you very soon. Oh my gosh. Thank you for that story. And thank you for reminding us that, like, basically our past will always haunt us no matter what because of the internet.
Yes. Thank you, Megan.
Oh my God. Awesome. Well, listen, we super appreciate Clint kicking off a show. It is always hard to be the first storyteller, and he did so with, like, I think, great grace and an excellent sense of humor because, we can't see you. So if you like this, let us know in the comments. It'd be a joy to see you. I'm excited to welcome up our second storyteller, Ivy Eisenberg, who's here to tell us a story about meeting the love of her life. Take it away.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's so great to be here. At 27 years old, I finished graduate school in central Pennsylvania, and then I moved back to New York City to find a nice Jewish husband. I got a job as a technical writer in Borough Park, Brooklyn. Now, this was the early 80s, but Borough Park, Brooklyn at that time looked like it was Poland in the 1930s. All these Orthodox and Hasidic Jewish men in hats and woolen coats, and the women's dressed modestly with wigs on their heads, and I had expected to see people chasing chickens down Fort Hamilton Parkway. The company I worked for was ultra-Orthodox with morning and afternoon prayer breaks, and of course, a lot of protocol between the men and women. No looking at each other, certainly no touching each other. Not that I wanted to touch anybody at this company. I mean, I was looking for Jewish, not this Jewish. My boss placed me in a glass-walled cubicle with the only non-Jewish man in the company, a blonde-haired, blue-eyed guy of Swedish stock from Chicago. He was a bit of an asshole, but he did keep a pack of Winstons in his desk drawer, and I was looking forward to starting smoking again when I came back to New York. So we became friends without benefits. And he was just the type of guy that would be attracted to me. He was smart, he was lanky, he was brooding, he was broke, but we were just really friends. And on Friday nights, when the rest of the company went home to their schmaltz and gribbenes for dinner, we would go out to poetry readings in the city. We'd go to the Upper West Side to see music. We'd go downtown to get cheap eats in Manhattan. Back then, there used to be able to get cheap food in Manhattan. And then on Saturday nights, I'd get all dolled up and go to the discos to try and find my husband, and he would do whatever morose loners do on the weekends. But the holidays were coming. I was still unhitched, and I thought of that old adage, if you can't shtup with the one you love, shtup the one you're with. And I decided I was going to try to seduce the Swede. I had the perfect scheme. My parents were going away for Thanksgiving. They lived down on Long Island. And my friend who lived right near my parents was having Thanksgiving dinner. So my idea was I was going to take the Swede home to my friend's house for Thanksgiving dinner. Then we'd go back to my parents' empty house and what have you. So we had to work on Thanksgiving Day because the company we worked for did not recognize American holidays. And I got the great parking spot because no alternate side of the street parking. And I packed up the gifts from my friends and what I call my seduction duffel. I had my only pair of non-granny panties. I had this little t-shirt for a nightshirt that was really cute and sexy without being too frou-frou. And I packed a diaphragm and a big tube of diaphragm cream because nothing's so sexy like shoving this gloppy mess up your whisker biscuit exactly a half hour before doing the deed and then pulling it out 8 hours later. I was all set. And all day at work, as I was editing the patient entry user manual, I was thinking about my moves. We would sit next to each other at dinner. I would put my hand on his leg and he would be a little shocked, but he wouldn't pull away. And then we'd have a lovely dinner and we'd drink a lot of wine and then we'd go back to my parents' house and you know the rest. So the end of the day, the Swede and I go back to my car in the parking spot after work and my car was broken into. They had jimmied the lock of the back seat. They had taken the gifts from my friends, and they had taken my seduction duffel. I was freaking. And the Swede goes, he had a notebook and a pen in his pocket because that's just the kind of guy he was. And he goes, "This is awful. We have to figure out what you lost. What got taken?" And I'm thinking, what got taken? My only pair of non-granny panties? My last chance of getting laid before I turned 30? So I said, I don't know, it's toiletries. So we called the police, who laughed at me for leaving stuff in the backseat of my car. We go to my friend's house for dinner. It was delicious, but of course, nothing happened. And there I was. I was alone once again for Hanukkah and New Year's and Christmas and Valentine's Day. But then spring came, and it was now March, and my loins started to come alive again. And I came up with a new scheme. The Swede, who had this blonde curly hair, was complaining that he had nobody to cut his hair. And I'm like, wait a minute, I cut hair, which is a total lie. I mean, I did cut my hair, my sister's hair, when she was a little baby, and I made it into like a Florence Henderson hairdo. And I once cut my friend's sideburns, and I cut her earlobe off. And other than that, I had no experience. Didn't matter. He said, why not? So there he was in my apartment, all soaped up, all shirtless, and I was rubbing my breasts against his back as I was cutting his hair with my craft scissors. And this time the seduction worked, although it took a week for him to realize that I was hitting on him. It took 4 years for him to propose to me. And then 20 years after we were married, out of the blue, he decides he'd like to convert to Judaism. What do you know? I got my Jewish husband. Thank you. And we're still married.
Oh my God. Ivy.
Thank you.
No, seriously, I feel like I learned so much. First of all, I learned like 87 new words. I would like you to email everyone watching later and be like, these are the words I use. These are how to pronounce them phonetically. And this is what they mean. Whisker basket is new to me. So
Whisker biscuit, yes.
Whisker biscuit. Excuse me. Okay, so I'm dead now. Oh my God, Ivy, I love that story, but also it's very sweet. Like, thank you for sharing the story of meeting your husband with so much, I would say, like cultural filth. That's really a romantic and touching story.
There you go.
Oh my gosh. Oh man, Ivy, I swear to God, I feel like I have so many questions, but mostly just about like how you pair your words together. They're amazing. Thank you so much for your story. We appreciate it. I know, Evan Roberts, I'm learning a lot of words. I am excited to welcome up Melody Lynn. Melody has a story about, I think, like charting a course and then taking a new direction. Take it away, Melody.
Thanks. So I am Melody. I am Asian, and I am an only child of divorced parents. And this is my story about how I turned my love of creative writing and academia into my current love, which is my role in audience insights in media. So the first thing is that I can trace my love of writing back to when I was 5. That's one of my earliest memories. I remember I would take construction paper and just stack them and then fold them and create a crease. And then I would staple the crease. And then I would take the stack and I would create a bunch of them, and they would just all be empty. But that way, anytime I wanted to write, I could just pull one out. And I remember that my most favorite would be creating that title, that top title page. And so it would be this clever title I would come up with, which would be silly because I'm 5. But I thought it was great. And then I would draw something really cute. But my favorite was being able to see at the bottom of that page by Melody Lynn. And that was like everything for me. I loved writing about everything under the sun. I was always inspired by books or conversations. My favorite was actually writing about princesses. I loved writing how these princesses would have to change their dresses every like 3 times a day because they would have to change for each meal. I don't know why I did this to them, but it brought me a lot of joy to draw them in different outfits. And that is the start of a budding writing career, right? Obviously. So that's how it started. It went well into my tweens. My book collection really rivaled like the young adult section in the library. I actually then created a library with my book collection. I would have my friends borrow my books, and then I would stamp the due date when they would have to bring it back on the back side of the book. But that, the thing about that was that books gave me shelter. They were my home. My mom owned a restaurant, and so she was always in the, working really late. And so I'd be alone. And unlike other kids my age, I just love reading way more than TV. And I think it was because whenever I picked up a book, I could come back to all these characters that I really cared about and that I felt like I belonged with. And then that way I didn't feel so alone. And so all this love of writing and reading really continued throughout, high school. And because I'm Asian, worked very, very hard to be the best of the best. It just is something in me, maybe the Asian. But I ended up getting to my dream school, which was Yale, where I was able to study English Lit, much to my father's chagrin, because he definitely didn't see all the signs that I was not going to become a scientist or a mathematician. So while I was at Yale, this is where my love of great writing and knowledge of what makes beautiful writing possible, this is where it all came. And I remember, my thesis was on John Keats's Ode on a Grecian Urn. And I remember these nights where I'd be with my friends and we'd just be sitting around in the common room and like books just strewn all over the floor. And it would be Dante and Tennyson and T.S. Eliot. And like we would all be hotly debating, probably drunk at times, but we'd be hotly debating who's better, Milton or Shakespeare. And those memories were just some of the best, some of the favorites of my life. And so this love of literature really fueled my dream to become a creative writer. And so I ended up going to graduate school for creative writing. And when I got in, I was so excited. Like, I just could imagine this new world of mine, this career, this budding career that I would be, hobnobbing with like all the the great literature greats of today and be able to get wisdom from them. And just, it was this dream and I was so excited. But then 6 months into, grad school, I got some bad news. My mom, she developed brain cancer, and it was stage 4. So we had to have me travel a lot between Taiwan and here, and it was so hard watching her. But it was great because that was time I'll never get back, and it was really precious. And so when I came back after she passed, I was destroyed. My health was bad. I had seizures. I had crippling insomnia. I was physically destroyed, emotionally just exhausted. And I thought, what a great way to honor my mom than to write. And so I sat down and I was like, this is it. I'm going to write. I'm going to do what it is that I said I would do. And I started, I started the first sentence and it was not good. I did not like that sentence. And I rewrote that sentence, I have to say, at least 20 times. And I realized at that moment that I can't write. I am crippled by my own education about great writing. I couldn't not compare what I was putting down as a first draft to what I was reading from Shakespeare and Keats and Tennyson. So it was at that moment, you know, where I was like, oh my God, I can't write. I can't do this. This was my dream. And I had built my entire career with that in mind. But I had to pivot. But I didn't know what to pivot to. So this was a pretty low period in my life. But I knew that I had to get out of it. So I said, I need to establish routine. I need to be out with people. So I got a job waitressing, and over here in Hoboken on the East Coast. Shout out to East Coast and Hoboken. And I couldn't believe how that very, very small, act changed my life. It reminded me of everything that I loved about people and being inspired by stories. And, I would watch people and I would listen to them, and I would watch their, how they moved around, and just be inspired and make up stories about them. And it was at that moment I knew that no matter what the next chapter of my story or my career would be, it would, at the center of it, be people and their stories. And so I ended up finding this certification course at NYU. It was in Nielsen audience measurement. And it was there that I found out how I could analyze data and marry that with like my people storytelling skills. And what that did was it really allowed me to dive deeper into understanding these deeper audience truths so that we could really connect with the audiences we were trying to target. And I really appreciate being in media, because there's no way I could have gotten here without the specifics of my background. The creative writing gave me a really deep understanding of the complicated truths and tensions that are within all of us. Academia taught me the importance of words and visuals. And reading taught me how spellbound and motivated and moved we can be by great storytelling. And so what I love most about my job is that it reminds me that I've come full circle to help clients connect with their audiences authentically. I remind them every day that every person has a story, that I have a story. And what matters most is what we bring, that what we bring to the audience needs to be what they want to hear or what they need to hear. And sometimes that's that they have to be comforted, that we have to bring empathy, especially at a time like this. Rather than trying to tell them what we want them to hear. And so this is how I help brands grow, using my strengths as an academic, a creative writer, and a storyteller. That's it.
Melody, thank you so much for your story.
Thanks.
Melody, I want to ask you, what's your mom's name?
Cecilia. Okay, so in Taiwan, they have their Asian Chinese names, but in school, they get to choose their own English names. And to this day, I have no idea how Cecilia became the name, but like it was a really beautiful name. So,
well, we appreciate you introducing us to Cecilia and sharing her story with us tonight. I really appreciate your story. I want to underline for everybody something I was so excited about in Melody's story is that, especially as storytellers, we spend so much time, and people who give so many proposals and who make so many decks, we think so much about what we have to say. And what I really love about Melody's story as like a takeaway for all of us is that her story focuses on how we should focus our hearts and our brains on what our audience needs to hear. And I think that's like such a thoughtful reminder, and it's like so compellingly shared. So thank you for that. And thank you for introducing us to your mom.
Oh, thank you. This was great.
Yeah, this was a blessing. Thank you. Well, everyone, I want you to take a really big deep breath with me, because our next story is super different. So we're going to close our show on a little bit of a lighter note, and we're going to bring up two men who are super old-time friends, and they're going to tell us a story from way back in their childhood. Are you ready, Joey and Blake? Take it away.
Hello. Yes. So this is a story about how two dorky kids were mistaken for the drug kingpins of their summer camp. Now, those two dorky kids happen to be Joey and I go back to third grade together. We've been best friends, and we went to sleepaway camp in the mountains of West Virginia. Now, everybody at this camp loved sports. They loved football, but Joey and I were a little different, and we've always kind of drifted towards magic and fantasy books.
And we should mention that this story doesn't take place in the 3rd grade. It takes place the summer after 9th. We were 15, so you can imagine how popular we were there.
Yes, on a typical day, the one we'll be describing, we were found sitting on a hill communicating with rocks, as you do. And a friend, this guy Adam from our cabin, he started walking up the hill towards us. And I remember Joey and I turned to each other and we were like, how crazy would it be if Adam right now just tripped?
And then he tripped. He actually tripped, as if by magic. And in that moment, I'm sure you've all had these moments before where something happens and things come into sharp focus and you realize something with absolute certainty. And in that moment, we realized with absolute certainty that we were now wizards.
And this realization just blew us over. We started to laugh, and I'm talking uncontrollably. We were high on the absurdity of the situation. And this laughter, it lasted for 3 days straight.
And we know that sounds absurd in and of itself, but it's actually true. We laughed for a full 3 days because everything that kept happening around us became increasingly more absurd.
So it all started when our cabin tried to make sense of this odd behavior, and the only conclusion they could come to that made sense to them at the time was that we must be tripping on drugs.
Which is ironic because this whole thing started with an actual trip.
But us? Drugs? I mean, we were the straight-laced kids who'd never touched the stuff. And the whole thing was ultimately very laughable, which got us into even more hot water. One of our bunkmates, this guy Tommy, who was a big bully at the time, he approached us and he didn't want to beat us up. He just wanted some drugs. And that was not the crazy part. The crazy part for us was what Tommy was wearing. Here's this big bully. He's not wearing a shirt. The only thing he's wearing is a pink inner tube, like a floaty, the head of which had like a seahorse head coming out of it. And it just looked preposterous. We could not stop laughing at this bizarre vision. And he just kept getting angrier and angrier with us.
And so then something really weird happened. He started to dance in front of us. And so this image of this like hefty kid in this pink seahorse inner tube undulating, we imagined it was some kind of like mythical creature, half man, half seahorse.
He got so pissed off that he told us, just go get lost in the woods, which didn't matter to us because that's where we normally went when we wanted to commune with the tree spirits. The only difference was this time we were followed. And we weren't followed just by anybody. We were followed by the coolest kid in camp, Mark. And Mark, he'd never talked to us before, and it was so insane because he had heard that we had a stash and he wanted in.
And Mark was willing to pay, but it wasn't with cash. It was with the most valuable currency in the camp that summer, Pringles. Because this was the late 90s and it was the height of the Pringles empire. And Mark was deadly serious about this. And he could not believe that we would not give him these drugs we supposedly had.
So word started spreading that we weren't just drug takers, but we were dealing them. And before long, people started to wonder, where are they getting these drugs from? What is the source? And it didn't take them long to zero in on the one place Joey and I had spent a majority of our time that summer, the nurse's office.
Look, I'm sure you can all agree, why would you want to play flag football when you could spend time in the bountiful paradise full of air conditioning and snacks that is the nurse's office? The nurses liked our company, or at least we like to think they did, but what we really liked is that there was an old VCR player and 2 of our favorite VHS tapes.
The Sound of Music and The English Patient. I mean, classics that every 15-year-old boy is into, right? Well, regardless, there was no way that our campmates would reach into our safe haven. What were they going to do? Ask these adult nurses for drugs? So it didn't stop Joey and I, however, from envisioning what that might look like. These sweet old lady nurses being interrogated, sort of like the Nazis interrogating the Von Trapp family.
And by this time, we're laughing so much that our abs feel like they are on fire. Like it actually really hurt. And we could have, used the nurses' help. Like we needed medical attention, stat.
And this is when there was a level 5 wizardry event. because the power at the entire camp shut off. And not only that, the supply of water vanished. What are the chances that these two things happened at the exact same time? There was one explanation and one explanation only. Our magic powers were growing stronger.
But so was everybody's suspicions about us. So that night, everybody had gathered on the football field, all of the counselors, all of the campers, and we were the only two people holding bottles of water. And so therefore, everybody became really suspicious that we not only knew that this water outage was going to happen, but that we had somehow planned it. And Blake and I could tell, looking around, what was going through everybody's mind. We had gone from low-level drug dealers to the drug kingpins of our summer camp. And our reach extended so far that we were able to turn off the electrical grid and shut off the statewide water supply.
Which was insane because we were not drug kingpins, we were wizards, and we got our water from the nurses earlier that day because it was hot out. This freaked my sister out, who was also at camp with us that summer, and she was younger than I was, and she came up to us and she was terrified. She had tears in her eyes, understandably, because she'd heard the rumors that we were taking drugs, that we were drug dealers, that for the last 3 days, we'd been high out of our minds. And not only that, now, on top of everything, we were drinking vodka. And Joey and I were like, wait, what, vodka? Turns out, because we were in hysterics on the football field, people assumed that we weren't just high, but we were wasted and drunk. And the water in our bottles was not water, but vodka. My sister, scared beyond belief, ran to the head counselor to get some help.
And so now we are actually laughing out of fear, because what if the head counselor tells our parents we would be kicked out of summer camp, we would be shipped off to, military school, we would be thrown in jail.
Yeah.
And what if Blake and I never saw each other again?
That would be the worst. So this counselor, he comes over, he sees us laughing hysterically out of fear, like Joey said, and he makes us open our water bottles, and he takes the water and he smells it.
But it was, of course, just water.
Now, honestly, we don't remember how this all ended, okay? In the hazy memory of childhood, maybe the laughter stopped as quickly as it began, or maybe we passed out from laughing because we were so exhausted. Who knows? All we do know is that kid, Adam, who tripped that day and started this whole thing, he has since gone on to marry his childhood camp girlfriend. They have 2 kids together. And we like to imagine that they met in the nurse's office. He was there because he tripped suddenly on the hillside. She was there because she got stung by a bee or something. And they fell in love watching the VHS tape of The English Patient.
And we like to imagine that the camp bully, Tommy, in the inner tube, that he is now an exotic dancer at a club called the Pink Seahorse.
And as for the nurses, we really believe that they disappear into the wintry woods every winter as tree spirits, only to return in the summer months to take care of and look after the oddballs, the outcasts, and the weirdos like us.
As for the head counselor that we were afraid was going to think we were drinking vodka and throw us into jail, we do know what happened to him. And actually, he is the one who ended up in jail. But that is a story for another time.
As for Joey and I, we are now writers in Hollywood. We are also 2 people who still believe that they might be wizards. And more than anything, we always try to find ways to make ourselves laugh at the absurdity that is all around us.
Which is, of course, really important in these weird times.
And it is something that we really do hope we can find a way to do in person soon, at a point that is not too far away from now. Thank you.
Thanks.
You guys, thank you so much for your story.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Oh my gosh, I really appreciate the absurdist end. Really, right? Not everybody does that with childhood memories. I also want to say I definitely was thinking back. First of all, I loved The English Patient a lot when I was in high school. A lot. Really. When Ralph Fiennes later became Voldemort, I was like, this is undoing a lot for me. But I so appreciate that, because as I know we're getting ready to think about a summer that might be spent indoors, it's a joy to think about all of our previous camp summers and times when we just giggled uncontrollably as small children. So thank you for that communal trip down memory lane. I'm on behalf of our audience. Awesome. Thank you guys so much for being here. Everyone, I am going to bring up all of our storytellers right now so that you can leave comments in the chat, and that you can be virtually. Everyone, shall we raise a glass to each other?
Yes.
Yes.
and to our audience. We would also really like to thank our friends at Brand Storytelling for convening this. So to Rick and Andrew and Mike and Jordan and everybody at Brand Storytelling who makes these things so magical. Cheers. Let's keep telling stories, okay, everyone? Thank you for being on the show tonight.
Yay.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, guys. And to everyone who
Thank
watched
you.
and who's been hanging out with us, thank you for joining us. Hopefully we get to do this again. Talk soon.